Ryan, a boy of only 6 years old, carried a pain that even adults couldn't fully comprehend. His mother, the person who always comforted him with a smile, was suddenly gone. Since then, the orphanage had become his home, but nothing could fill the void left by her loss. In Ryan's heart, there was an almost innocent wish that his mother could return and take him away from there, a desire so deep that he didn't even know how to express it in words. Can you imagine how such a young child deals with something so devastating? As much as the caretakers tried to offer comfort, Ryan remained isolated, trapped in his sadness. While the other children played, he sat apart, lost in thoughts fixed on the past. He remembered simple moments, like when his mother took him to the park, and the sound of her laughter echoed in the air. Now, everything seemed distant, as if those memories were from another life. This kind of pain, especially in someone so young, can feel unbearable, and the sense of loneliness is overwhelming. What many don't understand is that for children like Ryan, grief mixes with the feeling of abandonment. Each new dawn at the orphanage was a reminder that his mother wouldn't return. He couldn't understand why the world seemed so cruel, so unfair. Perhaps you felt something similar, a pain that seems never ending. And at that moment, Ryan wanted only one thing: to escape, to lose himself in the crowd, or to find a way to be close to his mother again, wherever she might be. One day, during a visit to the park with the other children from the orphanage, Ryan made an impulsive decision, one that seemed like the only possible choice at that moment. He took advantage of a moment when the caretakers were distracted and, with his heart racing, ran toward the cemetery where his mother was buried. For a 6-year-old child, the idea of running through the streets alone might seem frightening, but for Ryan, the fear of being caught was smaller than the pain he felt. He just wanted to get to his mother, as if simply being near her could bring some relief. When he arrived at the grave, the boy collapsed. His small hands touched the cold headstone, and the tears he had been holding back ran freely. Ryan didn't speak much, but there, in front of the grave, he talked to his mother, begging her to take him with her. At that moment, it felt like he was closer to her than he had been since her death. Perhaps you've experienced that kind of pain, where words aren't enough, and all you can do is cry. As he knelt beside the grave, the world around him seemed to fall silent. The sounds of the cemetery, the distant footsteps of people, all dissolved into the vastness of his grief. He didn't know how to move on, only that he didn't want to keep living without his mother. And in that moment, without him knowing, destiny was beginning to trace a different path for his life, something he couldn't imagine, but that would change everything. While Ryan wept beside the grave, a silent figure approached, making no noise, as if destiny had guided her steps there. Emily, a woman with a serene expression, observed the helpless boy from afar. Something about that boy deeply touched her heart. Seeing him alone, with his face wet with tears, she felt an irresistible urge to go to him. Gently, she knelt beside him and, with a soft voice, asked if he was okay. There was no immediate response, but there was an inexplicable connection between the two. Emily also carried pain in her heart. She had lost her son years before, and that loss still weighed heavily on her soul. Seeing Ryan reminded her of the nights when she longed to find some comfort, some meaning in everything that had happened. But at that moment, she wasn't thinking about herself. Her only concern was the boy in front of her. She comforted him with words of understanding, as if she knew exactly what he was feeling. Sometimes, simply sharing the pain can be the greatest form of comfort. They spent quite some time together there, side by side, in silence and in conversation. Emily told stories about her son, while Ryan, without even realizing it, began to find a little hope. It wasn't just Emily's presence that comforted him, but the idea that, perhaps, he wasn't as alone as he thought. Have you ever experienced a moment when, even without words, just someone's presence brought you peace? That's how Ryan felt at that moment. Something was changing, and he was beginning to notice. That night, after the encounter with Ryan, Emily had a dream that felt so real it made her wake up with her heart racing. In her dream, her son, the one she had lost so tragically, appeared to her with a serene smile. He held a piece of paper with an address on it, and as he handed it to Emily, he simply said, "Mom, he is waiting for you." It was a dream that repeated itself several times, always with the same address, the orphanage where Ryan lived. Even without fully understanding its meaning, Emily felt a calling, a connection she couldn't ignore. The dream, as strange as it seemed, wasn't something she could just dismiss. Each time she woke up, the feeling of urgency grew stronger. She told her husband James about the dream, and at first he was skeptical. But as the days went by, even he began to feel that something bigger was happening, something that transcended logic. Have you ever had that feeling, where it seems like the universe is trying to tell you something? That's exactly how Emily and James began to view the dream, as a sign. They decided to visit the orphanage, not knowing exactly what they would find, but with an inexplicable certainty that they were doing the right thing. And when they arrived, there was Ryan, the same boy Emily had met at the cemetery. The connection between them was no coincidence. It was as if all the pieces of a puzzle were finally coming together. Ryan, without knowing it, had prayed for something that was now materializing before his eyes, but what would come next was even more surprising. Ryan didn't know what to expect that day when Emily and James showed up at the orphanage. He recognized Emily immediately, the woman who had comforted him at the cemetery. There was something comforting about her presence, something that made his heart feel a hope he had almost forgotten. The orphanage director called Ryan for a conversation with the couple, and at that moment, something magical happened. Emily and James asked Ryan if he would like to be part of their family. Ryan's dream of being taken away from the orphanage, of having a family, seemed to be coming true. Of course, the process wasn't instant, but each passing day brought Ryan closer to the life he had always dreamed of. Emily and James made a point to visit him regularly, bringing gifts and, most importantly, time and attention. They talked about everything: the hard days at the orphanage, memories of his mother, and plans for the future. Ryan, still a little wary of whether it was all real, began to open up more and more, feeling that, at last, he had found a place where he belonged. This kind of connection doesn't happen by force. It's as if destiny had already decided. When the adoption was finally official, Ryan couldn't believe that he was actually going to his new home. He now had a mother and a father who loved and cared for him, just as he had dreamed. The void left by the loss of his mother was still there, but now there was something more: hope, love, and the certainty that he was no longer alone. Ryan's life changed completely, but he knew that it was all possible because, even in the midst of pain, he believed that something better was coming. Moral of the story: Ryan's story reminds us that even in the midst of the deepest pain, there is always a chance to start over. But the big question is, are you ready to transform your own life? How many times have you been stuck in the past, not realizing that the future holds something incredible, just waiting for an opportunity? Ryan showed us that, no matter how impossible it may seem, destiny can surprise us. But destiny only manifests for those who are willing to take the next step. So what will you do from now on? Will you keep waiting, or will you take action? What if the opportunity you've been waiting for is closer than you think, ready to be seized? The power to change your reality is in your hands. Stop for a moment and think. What steps do you need to take to create the future you so desire? Perhaps it's opening yourself up to new possibilities, like Ryan did, or seeking out the right people to accompany you on this journey. If this story inspired you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's much more to come, and you won't want to miss what's next. Every new story is an opportunity to learn and apply to your own life, and the next one could be the key to the transformation you've been seeking.